Hello there, and welcome to 5 tips for scoring a 5 on the AP Psychology exam. I'm going to take you through a few quick tips on how to prepare, and then we'll dive into the meat of the subject matter in a few additional videos following this one. All right, first of all, step number 1 is scout out the exam. And that's the case with any exam, standardized test you're going to take. Go check it out. In this case, go to College Board AP Central. That's where they keep this stuff. And they actually have material that's meant for teachers of AP Psychology. You could look at this stuff and kind of see what they're after. For example, here's some screenshots I took. Just to zoom in on this a bit, you're going to have 2 sections. There's a multiple choice section that's 100 questions, and you're going to have 70 minutes, which is 42 seconds per question-ish. Let's see, and the part 2 is 2 FRQs, or 2 free response essays. You're going to get 50 minutes for those, so roughly 20 to 25-ish minutes for each of those. And also this website would, the College Board website shows you precisely what percentage is dedicated to each topic that you covered in psychology. So it kind of gives you a sense of what seems to be more important for them. Step 2, practice. That is one of the best things you do for the SAT, ACT, or College Board exam. Practice, practice, practice. Get used to the sound of the questions and pacing of the test. Time yourself. These AP prep manuals are good for that. So you can find stuff online as well. Go out there and just practice, practice. The more you kind of jump in the water, the better in getting ready for the test. And practice pacing. Again, that's important. Number 3, vocabulary. This is the great thing about the College Board exam for psychology. It's really vocabulary centric. So if you are at the point where you don't feel like you're ready, practicing and drilling vocabulary is one of the best things you can do. There's just a lot of vocabulary, and so Quizlet kind of approaches. If you can go to Quizlet, you search for AP Psychology, and then also search for like the names of some of the chapters that you covered this semester, like cognition or development, and that's going to turn up a lot of flashcards that you can really work on. So drill that vocabulary. Step 4. Here's some tips for the multiple choice section. It's, again, 70 minutes. You have 100 questions. That's 42 seconds per question. That's not too bad, actually. Usually you move through pretty fast this section. You must use a number 2 pencil, assuming it's a paper and pencil one and not an online digital version. You are going to see stuff you don't know. This is not like a class test where in class you're expected to have mastered 100% of the material and then you get 100. This is a standardized test, so it's drawn from a variety of variety of sources across the country. People are using different textbooks, so don't get frustrated by that. Just answer as best you can and answer everything. Don't skip anything. The old advice was you could skip because of the way they scored it in the past, but they've changed that some years ago, and your odds are best if you answer everything, even if you don't know it. All right, so don't let that frustrate you when you see some that you're like, what is this? I've never heard of this before. Vocabulary, again, that's essential. All right, step 5, finally, the FRQ part. Again, it's 50 minutes to do 2 essays. So think about 20 to 25 minutes. If 30 minutes have passed and you're still on the first one, then you better move on. And don't waste time with a thesis or conclusion, which is some people find strange. But this is not, kind of the type of essay you might get in English. Just answer the question in writing. This is what the booklet looks like. After you get through with your multiple choice section, you open up this yellow booklet with lined paper and you use a black ink pen to answer. And it's okay to strike out, if you have to. You can't erase in that case. So now there's 2 FRQs. So there's the types of FRQs they tend to give you. Is a research one. They love that one, which you probably learned it toward the beginning of the year. Something about designing an experiment or the pros and cons of case study or survey or independent variable or operational definitions of this or that. They love that the APA ethical things, and so things about research and experimentation that you learned earlier in the year, because this is, after all, a research science, psychology is. So they love that question for one of them. The other question is very often a real life situation kind of thing. It's conceptual or Joe was walking down the street and got mugged, and a bunch of people are standing around watching Joe. How do each of the following apply to Joe's situation and why no one helps him? And then it'll list a bunch of bullet points or concepts from all throughout the semester, and you're expected to know what those concepts are. So defining it, yeah, that's important, again, vocabulary, but applying it to Joe's situation. So you need to understand the vocabulary deeply to be able to plug it in. So a real world application or conceptual kind of one that cuts through the whole year or semester. The third point there, it's a good idea to organize the way you answer in your essay according to the way the prompt is laid out. Don't skip around. That confuses them. Fourth, let's see, it's okay to label. And that may seem informal, but this is okay. So part A, part B, if there's a part C or something, go ahead and say part C, and it's okay to underline. It helps them know, because here's something to keep in mind, they want to give you full points. It's easier for them to grade and move on to the next essay if yours is, you're like, here, buddy, here's point 3, here's point number 4, give me that point, let's move on. So help them to help you. Well, let's see, the next point here, defining concepts before you applying them may help, and it won't count against you if definition is wrong. So unless they ask you what the definition is, which they don't typically, it's a good idea if they list vocabulary or something in the essay prompt to go ahead and define what it is first, and then plug it into that situation with Joe or whatever. Because if you don't get the definition precisely correct, they won't count off for it because that's not what they're asking for. But if in the application, which is what they are after, if your application to Joe's situation is not quite there, that definition might tip the balance in your favor. Like, well, this person knew what it was, so it might work for you. So there's nothing to lose on that. It's a good kind of routine practice to just define things before you plug it into the situation. All right, so let's see. It's essential that you answer the question also. Refer back to the situation. Go back and review what the prompt was and make sure you're answering the question that they've asked in the FRQ prompt. All right. Occasionally, they may require you to draw. Lately, every once in a while, like a graph or something, draw something. So don't be surprised by that. Answer everything, even if you don't know it, because you start with 0 points and acquire points, and you might get lucky. So even if you have no idea what the concept is, take your best educated guess. Don't tweet your answers, and by that, just don't unpack your thoughts, elaborate, say more than you think is necessary. Sometimes we cut it short and we're too brief. Elaborate, go beyond what you think is necessary, be redundant in your answers. And finally, vocabulary. Once again, vocabulary is one of the best things you can do. Drill that vocabulary to prepare for this. So that's point number 5, just real quick. Here's some sample questions. I'll pause you can pause your screen if you'd like to see if you can try to answer these, but here are the answers. All right, see how you did. That's just a sampling of the part 1, the multiple choice section. This is a really old version that was released to the public, so these questions, they've gotten a little more challenging since then, but just thought I'd give you a sense of what they look like. Here's a sampling of the first of the FRQs. Again, you can pause if you'd like to take a swing at it, but this is part 1, and again, it's research in this case, experimental situation, research situation. The second question, again, situational. It's a story about Lauren, and then it has a bunch of vocabulary there from across the year or semester. So pause if you'd like to, look at this further, but here are the keys that they use to address these. Now, that's the second one. Let's go to, so this is the key to the second one here. Notice they always they have general considerations, so the people who are grading the essays will have to consider this, and then they say this is what you do to give the student point 1, and so the graders will look at all this and award point 1 if they meet those requirements, and point 2, and so on. They even occasionally will say don't give the student this point if, so they have those kind of situations that are typical mistakes. Here's the next part of the key. And so we will be in some follow-up videos here going through a review of Unit 1, which is going to deal with the overall theory history and background of psychology, the research design, which, as I said, one of the FRQs will be about this, and then social psychology, which is a great way to start because it, shows us some real research flaws and ethical issues that social psychologists did. Unit 2, the second video we will do, is about the mind, and it really gets into the biopsychology stuff, the brain and neurons and optical illusions and sensation and perception, also the biology of consciousness and what's going on when you're asleep and dreaming and fully awake and alert. Part 3, we will do a review of the nature versus nurture question of how you develop into an adult and into old age across the lifespan. And that also involves your personality across the lifespan and personality theory. Part 4, we'll dig into learning. So the conditioning, this is animal psychology, behavioral psychology, the environmental stimuli and how you respond to that and develop habits or break habits, and how you motivate the rat to press the lever or whatever. And then some higher forms of learning as well, some more cognitive forms of learning, cognition and thinking, memory, intelligence, and how you measure intelligence with psychometrics to get IQ and such. And finally, we will end our review sessions with part 5, which is, emotions, coping with stress, what about a full diagnosis of mental illness, and then how you apply therapy to somebody who has been diagnosed with bipolar or schizophrenia or such. So that is kind of an overview of the things to come and the tips you need to do to prepare. So good luck, and I'll see you in part 1 of our review.